The first shipments of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine left a Michigan factory on Sunday, kicking off a historic effort to stop a surging pandemic that is claiming the lives of more than 2,400 Americans a day. Mask-wearing workers at a Pfizer factory in Kalamazoo began packing up the vaccine in dry ice early Sunday morning and loaded the first shipments onto trucks bound for FedEx and UPS planes that will whisk the precious cargo across the country. U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services Alex Azar, on CBS Face the Nation Sunday, laid out the ambitious distribution plan for the coming weeks and months ahead.
So we're shipping 2.9 million doses of vaccine. So whenever they get them in arms, that's 2.9 million people getting vaccinated. We'll be getting more and more Pfizer product, and we've got a 12.5 million of Moderna product, assuming that we get approval at the end of this week on Moderna that will ship out very soon thereafter. So 20 million vaccinations this month, and then we think we'll be up to 50 million total vaccinations of people by the end of January, and 100 million shots in arms by the end of February, just with the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines.
Operation Warp Speed Chief Advisor Dr. Monsef Slaoui said on Sunday that the U.S. expects to immunize 100 million people, or about 30% of its population, by the end of March, a slightly longer timeline than what Azar described. There is a massive logistical challenge in shipping the vaccine, since doses need to be stored at minus 70 degrees Celsius or minus 90 degrees Fahrenheit. It requires enormous quantities of dry ice or specialized ultra-cold freezers to maintain temperatures. Meanwhile, delivery drivers are giving the vaccine top priority over holiday gifts and other parcels. They will deliver many of the suitcases into the hands of healthcare providers on Monday. The shipments are the first of 3 expected this week. Although the federal government is coordinating distribution efforts, states have the final say over who gets the first shots. The federal government is sending the first shipments to more than 600 locations. Healthcare workers and elderly residents of long-term care homes are first in line to receive the inoculations of a 2-dose regimen given about 3 weeks apart. This comes as U.S. regulators late on Friday authorized emergency use of the vaccine, following similar moves by the UK and Canada, less than a year after the first cases were reported in the United States.
Canada's first COVID-19 vaccines touched down on Sunday, marking the start of the country's dosage rollout. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau tweeted the announcement with a picture of a cargo plane as it landed on Canadian soil, carrying the country's first batch of Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccines. The initial 30,000 doses will go to 14 sites across Canada. The first people expected to roll up their sleeves as soon as Monday will be the most vulnerable, including the elderly in long-term care facilities and healthcare workers. This week, Canada and the United States are set to become the first Western nations after the UK to begin inoculations. The vaccines were produced in Belgium and left there on Friday, then travelled to Germany and the United States before being split up and sent to inoculation points in Canada. A second vaccine from Moderna is also expected to be approved reasonably soon, and the country will be ready to accept shipments of it by the end of the week. Officials have said they expect to receive 6 million doses of Pfizer and Moderna vaccines before the end of March. Canada has had over 450,000 COVID-19 cases, with over 6,000 new infections reported on Saturday.
Russia's agricultural safety watchdog says the country is close to completing clinical trials for a COVID-19 vaccine for domestic animals, such as rabbits and cats, and expects to begin the regulatory approval process in February. The Federal Centre for Animal Health began developing the vaccine in spring after the authorities established the virus could be passed from humans onto some domestic animals. The vaccine should also work in mink, according to the agency. There has been alarm over infections in mink, with Denmark culling its entire herd, although Russia's herd has not been affected. Russia has said it believes there will be commercial interest in the new vaccine from its own animal fur breeders and from American and European businesses.
Indonesian police arrested one of the senior members of the Al-Qaeda-linked militant group Jemaah Islamiyah last Thursday, who police say was behind the 2002 bombings that killed over 200 people in Bali. The group's stated aim is to build an Islamic caliphate in Southeast Asia. The arrested man named Zulkarnain was one of the commanders of the Bali attack, according to an anti-terrorism police spokesman on Saturday. Zulkarnain is believed to have been involved in making the bombs that were used in the Bali attacks, as well as the bombing of the JW Marriott in Jakarta in 2003 that killed 12 people. Reuters was unable to reach Zulkarnain or find out whether he had any legal representation. According to a UN Security Council report, he also goes by the name Aris Suma Sono. When he was arrested, police say they were met with no resistance.
At Roseland Community Hospital in the south side of Chicago, Illinois, Evelia de la Cruz gets ready for another shift. The 60-year-old immigrant from Mexico puts on her face mask and gown as she prepares to clean the rooms of patients who have COVID-19. De la Cruz was assigned to the COVID ward at the start of the pandemic in March. She told Reuters at her home in a Chicago suburb that she took up the task after many refused because she felt it was her duty.
Yo me siento muy bien.
I feel good working there. I'm happy serving the sick because I know I am doing something good, and that fills me with pride, knowing that I am doing something good for the sick, for the hospital, for the country.
The work of doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals has been rightly championed during the pandemic, with people across the globe taking to their balconies at night to applaud medical workers. Yet their ability to work has relied on a less visible category of frontline staff. Janitors and cleaners like De la Cruz, who also risk infection and death but receive far fewer accolades. De la Cruz has been laboring 7 days a week, sometimes for weeks on end. And since the outbreak began, the only time she took more than the occasional day off was in July, when she herself was infected with the virus. A month later, she returned and carried on her responsibilities of disinfecting the coronavirus-contaminated areas of the hospital and keeping patients' rooms clean.
Me da mucho dolor.
Seeing a sick person and not being able to help is very painful. If I were able to, I would. If my hands could cure these people, I would. It hurts me so much not being able to help them, but I can be there serving them and cleaning their room.
De la Cruz, who has lived in the U.S. for 3 decades, says she keeps a vase filled with fresh flowers at all times as an offering to God as she prays for an end to the pandemic.
Formally removed Sudan from its list of state sponsors of terrorism on Monday. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made the announcement, bringing to an end a decades-old designation that has weighed on the Sudanese economy and curbed financial assistance. The United States listed Sudan in 1993 on the grounds that former President Omar al-Bashir's regime was harboring militant groups including Al-Qaeda, Hamas and Hezbollah. During the 90s, the regime became a pariah, hosting militant leaders including Osama bin Laden and Carlos the Jackal, and positioning itself as a fulcrum for Islamist movements. However, Bashir had cooperated with the United States on counter-terrorism after 9/11. It's all meant Sudan has been cut off from financial assistance and investment and from the global banking system. Sudan's Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok said in a statement, "We have been liberated from the global blockade which we were forced into by the behaviour of the ousted regime." The initial news in October that Sudan was coming off the US terrorism list came just days before outgoing President Donald Trump announced that Israel and Sudan intended to normalise relations.
Fresh hopes for a Brexit trade deal are the focus now for markets.
The very end will be when we will reach an agreement both on fair and free competition, and second, reciprocal access to the waters and the markets.
EU chief negotiator Michel Barnier commenting Monday morning in Brussels that after a weekend decision to extend talks beyond the Sunday deadline. The same sticking points remain, including fishing rights and how to ensure a level playing field for competition. But markets rose on the move to keep talking. Sterling was up over 1% against the dollar in early trades Monday. European benchmark indexes all rose too, with Germany's DAX and France's CAC 40 both up around 0.8%. Gains for London's FTSE index were more limited though, capped by a 6% slide for AstraZeneca. Investors pricing in weekend news of its $39 billion move for US drug maker Alexion. Broader sentiment remains vulnerable to news on Brexit, and it remains unclear when or whether a deal might be done. Diplomatic sources said Monday the two sides had actually moved further apart on fishing rights.